Sorry, I didn't expect that to go as well as it did. I'm afraid I had a slightly more negative view of this gentleman.
No, it's all right.
A less positive than that. That's pretty good.
Sure.
Yeah, because I've watched some of Mohammed Hajib's channel and your channel, and I thought the way it went with Cosmic Skeptic wasn't as good as it could have been. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but bear in mind, Cosmic Skeptic has spoken ill of our prophet, so that's why Hijab was a little bit firm with him.
I think in the world of debate you're allowed to speak those kind. You're allowed to speak your opinion openly. I don't think he was trying to be insulting. I think he was trying to just engage in a debate. You know what I mean? So, but good luck anyway.
Hopefully next week we'll hear you.
Yeah, next week.
Come along next week.
Sorry.
So, what I wanted to, and I think we're going to get an agreement here, I don't think we're going to disagree, is so natural selection can help us survive, and it can basically allow the next sort of the genes to be selected which are like, for example, behaviors which are going to be conducive to your fitness, they're going to be passed, they're going to be fixed in the population. But truth itself, the value of truth itself, is not something we can empirically justify. That's more of, like you mentioned earlier, a gut feeling, an instinct.
What you're saying seems so important that I don't want to continue unless I've really grasped it, and I don't feel I have. Maybe I'm being touched. Are you drawing the difference between embracing ideas which are functional for survival and have utility, and embracing ideas which are ontologically true?
Yes.
Okay, that distinction.
Yeah. And the distinction.
No, okay. If that's where we're at, I would guess and hope that the trajectory of your utilitarian truth, of your utilitarian knowledge, is moving closer and closer to ontological truth. That's how you would evolve.
Does
that make sense?
Yes, and that is precisely what evolutionary psychologists actually assumed. Right. However,
I thought I just made that.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's actually quite intuitive. However, the problem came when people like James Sage and Anthony O'Hare, these other philosophers, they pointed out you could perfectly well survive on false beliefs, and in fact, sometimes false beliefs have greater fitness value than true beliefs.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So although it looked like it was going parallel, it actually goes perpendicular in some aspects. So the reason I was saying this is because in terms of epistemology, I don't think we can justify truth from a rational perspective. I think that
you're saying you think there's no such thing as truth.
No, I'm not. Okay. I'm saying that you and me, Tony, right?
Yeah.
I sometimes get you and me, Tony, we both believe truth is intrinsically valuable. We both believe this, right?
That's such a deep assumption that I've got to. Yes, I do, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. So now this is an interesting thing. So let's make a distinction between intrinsic value of truth and instrumental value of truth.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure you know, like, for example, money and gold and. Okay, so we both believe that instrumental value of truth is there in the world. We all believe that truth has instrumental value, because if you see, for example, 3 lions go into a cave and 2 of them walk out, and you do your maths right, you know that there's a lion in there, you're not going to walk in there, right? So truth has...
we could do that. Look, if you don't grasp the truth, you're going to fall flat on your face very quickly, okay?
Exactly.
So the opposite proves your point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, lack of truth will fuck you up.
Will basically take you out of the gene pool. Take you out of the gene pool.
Truth as an asset, as a utility, which I thought was your point. It's an asset, it definitely is a utility.
Yeah, it is. What I'm saying is we both agree it has utility.
Yeah.
The question is, do we believe it to be intrinsically valuable? Right?
Well, I believe. Well, you could then break that down. Does that utility has intrinsic value? Yes.
No, not the utility. Not the utility.
Well, if say it again.
Okay, so good. Utility having intrinsic value is a side point. I'm not making that point.
Yeah.
I'm making the point that the fact that me and you both have an intrinsic worth for truth, that we believe truth is intrinsically valuable. This is something which is innate. We recognize it, and we don't really need justification for it.
Yeah, and it may be a false assumption.
Well, I believe it's true.
So do I.
Yeah, but here's another.
We can show a sphere where truth, ontological truth, has utility. Therefore, at least in part, truth has a functional value.
You're right here, but I'm going to make a different point. The point I'm going to make is truth is so intrinsically valuable that we are willing to give up the utilitarian value of false beliefs to go with the true beliefs which are uncomfortable.
I think that's a really nice insight, and I would say that what
it's not my insight.
Well, I think that what you're saying.
It was mine.
Okay.
I thought about it for a couple of months.
No, it's actually quite. Whoever's it was, it's quite beautiful because it speaks to faith. I think to me that speaks to faith. You're going. I'll let go of my short-term utilitarian interest because I have a faith that there is a bigger destination that I should try and embrace.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very spiritual insight, and I concur with it. Yes.
Yeah. So the reason why I brought us to this junction is because of epistemology.
Okay.
Now, in terms of my epistemology, you seem to be following this Cartesian skepticism sort of thing, right?
Okay.
Okay. I take it. I think therefore I am, and that's like the main thing. Everything else is built upon.
Well, actually, I think it's I care, therefore I am, or I feel, therefore I am is even deeper. Or I think, as God put it, I am, therefore I am.
Okay.
If you want to go really mystical. But I think there's one key defining thing. There's one statement you can break it down to, an axiomic statement of self-existence, which is irrefutable.
Yeah, that's what Descartes did.
Thereafter, everything else. I don't know exactly how you phrase that statement.
Yeah.
I think it's I feel, therefore I am.
Yeah, so the first person to do this within Western philosophy was Descartes.
Yeah, sure.
So
no, that I know,
meditations
that,
and So I disagree with that view. Right? Yeah. Even though Descartes was a theist and he used this argument to actually build a case for theism, I still don't think that's right.
Okay, what's not right?
Okay, his Cartesian skepticism, I don't agree with. Right? And the reason why I don't agree with it is because what he's basically doing is he's doubting everything and then going back to what he really knows, which is that fact that he exists.
Yeah.
And from there, he's building a case for everything.
Yeah.
Right?
He's trying to get back. My understanding of the context of that situation was the world being round, a lot of ideas and assumptions that human beings have carried for centuries were suddenly under attack. The species was going, what do we know for sure? Because like the flat earth had turned into the round earth. You just had the discovery of America and all of this, yeah? So, and in light of that uncertainty and that sense of topsy-turviness, they were looking for core axioms they could rely on. So Descartes went hunting for one, and he went, okay, you can stand rock solid on I think, therefore I am, everybody. You can relax. We have a certainty again. It's not all just in the eye of the beholder. So it was an important contribution.
It was a contribution, but I think, like with anything, he went to an extreme.
He may well have done. I'm just applauding the fact you need the underlying axioms to build any case.
Yeah,
and he was doing
well, you do. But for you to make a case about epistemology, if you start off with his view, I believe that his view just leads to a type of hard solipsism, where you don't really know anything. You're always doubtful about it.
No, you don't. But now let's live in the real world a
Extreme
minute.
skeptic.
So what's the alternative? Yeah, so
you could end up with that. It's okay. You could end up with that. But I'm willing to embrace the fact that I'm a flawed creature with flawed perceptions.
No, that's fine.
But I have to make choices in the real world.
Yes, exactly.
As best I can, even though I'm only guessing what the real world is.
Yeah.
And I learn through experience the best patterns of choices to make.
So that's the pragmatic view.
Yeah, I'm being pragmatic, so I'm not being solipsist.
No, you're not. What I'm saying is, logically, that view leads to solipsism. However, what you're doing is...
No. I think it can lead to solipsism. It can lead to philosophical idealism, which I think is a mistake.
Okay,
I think the two are compatible. Reality ultimately is just in my mind.
Okay, fine.
But there is a real world out there with objective truth.
Yeah, sure. But I know where we're disagreeing now. If I add the caveat that everything has to be rationally justified, and then I hold on to the view that the only thing that I know is that I exist, when you add these two together, you're basically in a philosophical quagmire, which you can't leave.
Being very consistent.
No, not you. I'm saying the person who makes the claim, the additional claim, that a belief, for it to be believed, right, you have to justify it.
Yeah.
Now, I think that view is actually outdated. Right?
Yeah. If you mean by justify it 100%, with 100% certainty, then we agree. I don't think you can with 100% certainty justify any argument.
Yeah.
They're all continued.
Yeah. So Aristotle gave a very good argument. Yeah. He said, look, all knowledge. If you ask someone, how do you know A? He says B. How do you know B? Because of C. So if you have an infinite regress of justification, you will never know anything. So what he has said is that there's some foundational beliefs which are axiomatic, which are unjustifiable, and those are used to build your world.
Yes, correct.
Now that's the foundationalist view. I believe that view makes more sense.
I'm a foundationalist.
Okay, if you're a foundationalist, then you can
In the way you described it, I'm totally 100%.
Okay. Now, because I don't want to get too distracted by the philosophy side of things, something else that you
Why
said.
the philosophy is the most interesting bit.
It is. But you did mention spirituality, so I want to jump to where I was trying to get to. From the Islamic perspective, you mentioned something which really got me thinking. You mentioned about something inside.
Yeah.
Now, in Islam, we call that the fitra.
Okay.
Fitra means your innate disposition.
Yeah.
Your innate disposition. Now, we don't believe that you need to rationally justify God's existence, although it can be rationally justified. We don't believe you have to rationally justify morality, although morality can be rationally justified. So there is an element which is the philosophical rational side, but there's also a spiritual dimension which is higher than the rationality.
I agree that spirituality transcends rationality.
I'll give you one example why, Tony, right?
Yeah.
The example is this. You and me, we both believe right and wrong exists. We believe this.
I think the odds, I hope they do, and I think the odds are fighting.
Okay.
I also believe that maybe not. It's possible I live in a universe where there are no moral imperatives and this is a kind of hell, as I think I said before. It's possible we just landed in a horrible place. But it's also possible we've landed in a place where actually there are moral imperatives and it's a bit better than that. Both things are on the table.
So from the Islamic perspective, deep down inside, we all know there is right and wrongs. Deep down.
I can accept that there might be. Can you accept the possibility there may not be?
Okay, so in terms of the ontological existence of right and wrong, I'm an absolutist. I believe that right and wrong does exist. Where I can be a skeptic is in terms of how do we know this particular right or this particular condition.
Got it.
But, so ontologically, I do believe they exist. For example,
ontologically, I hope they exist, and I'm fighting the corner that goes, there is a moral imperative. I want to fight it, but I want to do it on the understanding that I might be wrong, and we might all be in hell with the shit. But I think it's important to realise knowing that we might be in deep shit here, I think is important because it tells you what the stakes are. If you're 100% sure that it's all good, there's actually less of an imperative on you to really do hard work. But when you realise that the stakes are very, very high here, if there are no moral imperatives, we're in trouble.
Yeah. So,
and it's possible there are.
Okay, so the difference between us now is, so far we've agreed a lot, the difference between us now is, I believe with certainty in God, and I believe with certainty that morals exist and these things happen. You're saying it's a possibility, but you're also saying that there's a possibility this is not true. Now, I want to tell you the difference between us and why the difference is there. I believe the way you're arriving at it is only using rationality. Well, okay.
It doesn't feel that way to me. I think I'm quite emotional.
What I'm saying is, so far, you're using just your reason and your rationality, and even if something seems very reasonable, such as the fact that right and wrong exists, truth is valuable, you'll always have a 1% doubt. You say maybe it's not the case. You'll always keep that door open.
I think it's the best way of creating an argument which will defend morality. I want to do the best job I can of defending the moral principle and hoping it's real. And I think the best foundation to do that I can do is to be diligent and epistemological and axiomatic. That creates the strongest steel man argument I can. If I don't do it that way, I think I end up with straw man arguments, which I think you can get from, no offence, more fundamentalist religions, where they just go, it says it so it's true. And that's hopelessly unprofitable. persuasive.
So, what you said there, the difference between us now is that you would keep that possibility that maybe it's not true. You'd
I
always
think
keep-
it makes me stronger in my defense of morality.
And I think the difference is that as a Muslim, I don't believe rationality is the be-all and the end-all.
Neither do I.
I believe that the certainty that I have is through spirituality, and rationality only helps you get to a certain level.
I agree.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. I mean, I'm very into the Kabbalah.
So what supersedes
Kabbalah-
rationality?
I don't know. Don't prejudge which branch of the Kabbalah I might be into.
No,
but
I'm saying from our perspective, Kabbalah we wouldn't say is spirituality, but spirituality is, for example, to cut to the chase, a spiritual experience would give certainty in a way that rational arguments cannot undermine it. That's the point I'm making.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but the reason I mentioned the Kabbalah was it's one of the things I like about it is as you climb the ladder of understanding, originally it's metaphysical and rational, but it reaches a point where they go, now you've got to let go of all that and it becomes mystical. Yeah? Where you've got to use something higher still. The very highest level of the Kabbalah, you've got to let go of that framework, the rational framework. But what you mustn't do is contradict the rational framework. There's a very big difference. Just because there are things which are beyond rationality doesn't mean those things have the license to contradict rationality.
Okay, so that's a good point, but there is a small caveat, and this is where we're not going to disagree, right? Someone can come to you and make a really good rational argument which will persuade you of X.
Yeah.
Somebody else can come and give you a really good rational argument which will persuade you of Y.
Yeah.
So you can fluctuate.
Yeah.
However, the certainty that you get from spirituality, it makes you understand that, look, now I know this thing to be true, so it doesn't matter if someone comes and tries to give me an argument against it. Eventually, I will come to the true
I
argument.
see that as a mistake. I think that degree of certainty is counterproductive to, I've said this before, don't take this wrong, to jihad. I think if jihad means struggle, and I think it does, I think there's more struggle if you're carrying some element of doubt. It's harder to struggle with the eternal conundrums and problems and moral dilemmas of spirituality. It's easy to do if you've got no doubt. Frankly, it's like saying, I'm brave, but I can't feel fear.
Okay.
If you don't feel fear, you're not really brave. And if you don't have any doubt, you're not really struggling at a fundamental level.
I think a better way of explaining it is from this perspective. We believe that through a spiritual experience, you can reach a level of certainty which cannot be undermined by someone trying to make you doubt something. That
may or may not be true.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go with it.
Okay,
except to go, as long as...
The struggle part's separate, isn't it?
Well, I think there's more struggle in having a degree of
I'm getting
doubt. Because I remember Muhammad Hajid saying recently, he went, when I was younger, one of the things I said was, just give me anything but doubt.
Okay,
and I thought, actually, maybe that wasn't so insightful, because a bit of doubt, he said, the Prophet, I'll take anything, but I don't want doubt.
Okay.
And I think a bit of doubt can be useful.
Okay, so look, what it is no human being can say that they are doubtful about everything. We have to have certainty in something to doubt something else.
And I've already defined the thing I have certainty in,
Which is
something like, I think, therefore I am.
So we both agree. You can have certainty in something.
Yeah.
The only difference is that your certainty is a set of things which is smaller than my range of certainties. That's all it is.
Yes. But I think if we inspect our certainties, you'll discover that the one I'm embracing is being more diligent.
Well,
but ultimately, surely, if you don't know whether you're dreaming now or not, then everything's up for grabs.
Okay, so here's the thing.
All of us have had a dream where we thought we were awake.
Yes.
Yeah. Therefore, we don't know 100% that we're not dreaming now. Therefore, you don't know that you were always dreaming. Therefore, you don't know that everything you think you've learnt wasn't a dream. Therefore, essentially, you know nothing for certain except that something's happening. That's all you actually know.
This view I flirted with after I left university, and I was really trying to get to grips with it. I rejected it eventually because it itself is incoherent. And I'll explain to you why it's incoherent. The reason why it's incoherent is because if you are to have this idea that, okay, I don't know whether I'm awake or I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know the difference between the two.
No, I do know. I can place strong bets on the difference between the two. I just don't know 100%. The word "no" to me means 100%. Maybe you guys have that connotation. Maybe this is my mistake. When I've heard people say "no," I think they mean 100% certain.
Okay, but either way,
as opposed to guess or prefer, no means definite.
Sure. The thing is, it doesn't make a difference because you're still in existence.
Yeah.
So whether you're dreaming or you're awake,
That's exactly my point.
yeah. So the existence itself,
Exactly.
of itself. Now, can we have a situation in which existence, like we exist as awake beings or brains in vats or whatever it is? So it's kind of irrelevant whether we're going to illusions or not.
No, it's not, because the fact that I exist is 100% knowledge certainty. Now, the qualities of the existence I'm in, that's up for debate. Right. Those are the things we're debating now. We're going, there's some stuff going on here, there's some laws, there's some rules, or maybe there aren't. Are there rules, aren't there?
So,
how do the rules work? And all of that is up for debate, and I can never be epistemologically 100% sure about any of them.
But we can also be certain, like Descartes came to the certainty, well, he used a different argument, that there is a creator who is the cause behind all of existence.
That's a massive jump. That's an enormous jump.
Okay, wait. In terms of existence, ultimately, why do we believe we exist? What's the reason
It's
that we
beyond the reason. That's the whole point. It's the axiomic bedrock of self-defining certainty, which means I can get past the turtles all the way down thing, because you'll never be able to prove a thing because of
Foundationalism.
Hume's fallacy of induction and Gödel's incompleteness theorem.
Foundationalism.
Rationalism is always eating its own tail.
Foundationalism, right? Basically, the same view you said you agreed with. The same applies for truth as it does for existence.
If we can collectively agree on moral codes, which also makes sense, and they stress test rationally, they stress test intuitively, and so on, we can create better worlds for ourselves and everybody
No, but we both agree, even if they had no utility, we should still value them.
We should still, but as it happens, their utility is, I would have thought, fairly self-evident.
No. However, truth can sometimes be horrible.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
So, for example, me knowing my own, like I can tell my children, you know what, you're never going to die. It's a myth.
Yeah.
People don't die.
Yeah.
In a way, they'll live their happy life, and one day they'll die, and they won't know that they died. So they can live their life in
yes,
this
you
sort of
could
false
leave them
belief.
in ignorance.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
maybe you should. There's an argument to say you should.
But that's what I'm saying, that we value truth to the point that we are willing to take on beliefs which we know are uncomfortable, because we value truth over comfort.
Yeah, and I think there's some nobility in that.
Yeah, and that's because not only our existence, not only truth, not only morality, all of these things are things that we are not rationally able to justify from first principles. We accept them axiomatically, and this is part of the human fitrah, what I was speaking about earlier.
I hope you're right, and I believe you may well be. I think we have an instinct for religion. Okay? I think you're saying something like that.
I am saying that.
I'm totally on board with the idea that human beings have an instinct for religion. In different cultures, those religions manifest in different ways, but they have a common underlying thread, and I embrace it. It's a good thing. All I'm saying is, epistemologically, I don't know. Okay, but
no, that's
I'm
fine.
giving it a 95%.
Okay, so
We're
Tony,
on the same team.
so to end, what I'll say is, our only disagreement here is, I believe that if you adopt spirituality, you will come to that 100%.
Okay, and I believe that spirituality is about not embracing 100% because it would be inappropriate.
Okay, so now what we get to is, I don't believe that's spirituality.
I think 100% is too easy.
Okay.
Okay, I think I want a real jihad here, okay? Because I think the stakes are so high, we need a real jihad, and we've got to be very diligent.
You see, the Prophet Abraham.
Sorry, I don't mean to use jihad in an offensive way.
No.
It's a concept.
We understand.
Concept struggle, yeah.
The thing is, look, jihad, even the way that you're using it currently, is actually the correct context.
It's the correct way.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's a struggle. So, like, for example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, the greatest jihad is the word of truth against a tyrant. Yeah? So it's a word of truth. It's not fighting. It's basically you speaking the truth. So where I think we should end this conversation, because it's gone really well, right? Is that I believe if you try the spiritual, like you tried Kabbalah, right? Or you said
I'm interested in synthesizing all of the religions with humanism into something which I think doesn't. I don't think there's necessarily a big argument to be had here. I think the small print is a problem. I think there's a lot. My view of religion has always been it's like panning for gold, okay? You go to a religion, you pan for gold, and you'll always find quite a lot of dirt in there, but what's important is the gold. Now, there'll always be some people going, look at this dirt, and I'm going, screw that, look at the gold in here. No, Islam's clearly got a lot of gold in it, yeah? So the 5 pillars to me are really strong. All of the ideas and principles are there, and I can see gold in other religions as well. So I just want to get all the gold in the same camp and realise you've got far more in common than you think.
Okay, so
But the literalism is a problem and the dogma is a problem.
so I want to. I don't have it with me now, but are you coming to the park next week?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get a book, and it's a book by, and it's better if without the cameras we can have a discussion. So it's a book about Islamic spirituality.
Yeah.
I'm just going to gift it to you. You have a read, and then you go on your own journey. The fact is, look, when I heard you speaking earlier to Ali Dawah, I actually thought, do you know what? A lot of what you're saying is actually making sense.
Thank you.
The only disagreements are when it comes to spirituality and certainty. And I think we can have a conversation about that.
Good. I hope we can. I think this is good. I didn't expect that it would go so well with him either, because I thought it was going to be more kind of fundamentalist and stuff. But that was good. But I tend to go for the points of conflict. For me, the points of conflict are things like the attitude to gay people doesn't work for me.
Right.
And the dependence on the supernatural. Anything counter-scientific, unfortunately, I have to see to a scientific view. And I do say unfortunately with deep regret.
You separated that.
Okay, so the thing is, look, okay, let's have that discussion about the scientific view maybe next week.
Okay.
Because the thing is about the scientific view, just long story short, look, God creating the universe with its laws of nature. Laws of nature essentially are not really things out there. They're just our way of making sense of the patterns that we perceive. So for example, a miracle is something which is logically possible. A miracle to us looks like a violation of nature's law. However, from God's perspective, it's just regularity.
Yeah, no, if there's a God, everything you say is true. God is allowed to make the laws of nature and then break them at his or her discretion.
Well, there is no breaking, but yeah.
Okay. He makes default laws. This is where we got the Thomas Aquinas.
Yes,
He goes,
yes.
there's default laws.
You know your stuff.
Well, I know enough to know that. I'm not nearly as well read. I mean, one of the things about seeing Mohammed Hijab and a lot of people here, I know you're better read than I am. Yeah?
No, but you understand the concepts really well.
Well, I hope that I pinned down the key things, yeah? And I'm slightly suspicious of people who always endlessly quote facts. Just because you know lots of facts doesn't mean you've assembled them correctly. So I hope I assemble what few facts I know accurately.
Well, you got evolutionary psychology, right?
Thank you. I do a bit. How did we get onto that?
So anyway,
where were we at? Backtrack. What did we just say?
So what we said is we're going to, the science stuff we can cover another time,
Yeah.
but the spirituality book I'll bring for you next week, Tom.
Happy to do the spirituality. But quickly on gays, do you want to just let me litmus test where you would stand on gay
So
people?
I would go with the orthodox Islamic position, and that's not something which fits within liberalism, but that's like, this is again part of the, if you look at the moral zeitgeist, the way that society keeps changing in terms of its morality, right? 100 years ago in this country, certain things would be considered, fornication, say, 100 years ago would be considered evil, today is considered perfectly fine.
I'm not a moral relativist, so I don't believe that true and false change with time.
Okay, no, what I'm trying to get to is, Islam is a religion in which we believe God is the one who gives us morals. Okay? So we believe, if in a, like for example, in the world today, there may be in some countries there's a liberal conception of morals, in other countries there's not. We believe in the Islamic conception, even though, and again, this comes back to spirituality, there may be things which make no sense from a liberal point of view. Especially if you're brought up, like you're brought up in this country, you probably went to school here. Here we have this egalitarian view, so the views that Islam holds about, for example, gender roles, homosexuals, freedom of speech, this, I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of discrepancies between that and a Western liberal paradigm.
Yeah.
But the question really is, if Islam is true, then it should be followed regardless of whether we feel it's right or wrong.
If you're going to adopt a literalist interpretation, the more flexible you're willing to be with your interpretation, the more you're willing to see it the way I viewed it as being sifting for gold.
Okay, but do you know what?
Then you can start.
Do you know what, Tony? The same, as a Muslim, the same thing I could say about liberalism. I could say, well, because in this case, what we're doing is we're looking at Islam, we're saying, let's make it malleable according to liberal ideals, but you could do the same thing.
I don't want to come across as the kind of liberal. I hate postmodernism, okay? I'm the enemy of postmodernism, okay? And as I said to he's gone now, but he was really nice, the guy I was talking with before. Yeah, no, the guy I originally spoke with before him. Probably, he was great. as I said before, when Jordan Peterson debated Sam Harris, I respect both of them a lot, yeah? And they both agreed that the enemies are on the one hand dogma and on the other hand postmodernism. The idea that all morality is relative and in the eye of the beholder, that's a real danger. It might be true, but it's a dangerous truth.
I don't think it's true, but
I didn't think it's true, but it might be. But it's a dangerous truth, and we've got to. That's the battle to have. Is moral imperatives, yeah. But dogma is the other problem.
Okay, but
you've got to walk between the two of them.
But you know, when you said dogma, someone could say that you saying, I am certain that I know I exist, they could say that's dogmatic.
They could, but I think they'd be wrong if they were honest with themselves.
No,
all I'm saying is, the light's on. That's all I know.
Yeah,
I don't know
so
what's
what
going on
you're saying
in
is
the
keep
light.
an open mind.
The light's on, yeah, of consciousness.
Do you feel like he answered your question?
Which question? I don't, but maybe, I know he didn't, but I don't think he was ducking it. I think we just naturally moved somewhere else. I think,
in what way?
I think the literalism with which the Quran goes, if it says it in the book, it's got to be true, doesn't make sense. I think the way to look at the laws across religions is that they're aspiring to deeper underlying moral axioms. And usually the moral axiom is the golden rule, treat other people the way you'd like to be treated yourself, okay?
Yep.
So when they say something like, don't eat pork, right? That is not a serious moral adjudication, okay? That's going, in the environment you're in at the moment, pork tends to be quite poisonous, don't eat it because survival is a good idea. But once pork has become healthier, you don't need to still not eat pork.
No, but that's assuming that pork is forbidden because of health reasons.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is I think it is. I think the moral codes which are put forward in religions are reflecting core, sensible, underlying principles.
Okay, so let's go back to...
They're not in themselves correct.
So let's go back to what you said earlier about miracles.
Yeah.
You said from a God-centric point of view, if God exists, then miracles make sense.
Yeah.
Likewise, if God tells us in society something is forbidden and something is allowed, then it's perfectly
the key
logical.
word is if. Because we're here because you guys read a book. Now, my common sense, my rational analysis tells me that book was written by a human being. Okay. Now that may have been or a series of human beings, but it was written by hand, and that human being or human beings may have been divinely inspired, but I don't take it automatically as read that they're infallible, or that everything that they put in there is automatically to the last syllable.
Well, you shouldn't.
Absolutely accurate.
You shouldn't.
Okay.
And we're not making that argument either.
Oh, okay, good.
No,
well,
we're not asking you to believe based upon blind belief. We're not asking.
I didn't say blind. It was written by
the fact on rationality.
Yeah. So what we would say.
So there may be some stuff in there that
he said the spiritual.
What we would say is that you use rationality and spirituality, and both of these can lead to certainty in Islam.
Yeah. And when I look at the impression I get about God from looking at all of the religions is that he, she, it is good.
Okay,
it's a force for good.
So about God, you said something, right? About he, she. We believe God is transcendent, so he or she or gender or any anthropomorphic description, it doesn't work. I just thought, because that's a very important spiritual point.
Okay, I'm not buying that. My interest in God is in embracing something which is fundamentally about teleology and moral purpose.
That's
a God who is good.
No, I'm not saying not good. I'm saying, because you mentioned...
The key property of God that you would normally mention are omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, although you guys don't have omnipresence, do you?
No, we have God being ever present, but not...
Omnipresent.
In a different context.
Yeah, in a different context, So basically, we believe God is closer to us than our jugular veins, but God is above creation. God is transcendent of creation.
Okay, transcendent, simultaneously transcends creation and is simultaneously all of it.
Through his knowledge, he's ever present.
He says it's unlike creation. What I get from the books is the key property of God is that he is morally good.
Yes,
and then he puts it to you that life is a fundamentally a moral endeavour. Your life and the condition of your soul is based on you making positive moral choices, and that is the meaning of your life.
Yes.
The meaning of your life is to make good moral positive choices. Therefore, I infer a God who is good, who aspires to goodness, and because I believe I live in a self-consistent universe, then the book that I'm being presented with should present a God who is consistently behaving in a good fashion. Now, when that God then starts discriminating against his own creation, and it seems that, seeing as he chose to create these things, And seeing as he knew in advance how things would play out, and seeing as he could see that those beings would come to terrible ends, just the creation of hell would be an insanely inconsistent thing for a good deity to do. It should jar with you. There's
If we go by your description of you're using your idea of good and then you're judging according to that.
It's all subjective. We've already agreed it's all subjective.
No, we don't.
Probabilistic.
No, we don't. That's the thing. I don't agree with that. It's all subjective.
But it's all probabilistic.
Okay, but from God's point of view, God is the one who dictates what is right and wrong.
But now you're just blindly following a book. If you're not placing any boundary conditions on how you should adjudicate whether you put this book over that book.
You should.
Okay, well, my condition is be self-consistent. The primary message I get from you is life is a moral endeavour and each person should strive morally, yes? Therefore, and I also get that I should be self-consistent. So I expect God to lead by example. And when God goes and does something as blatantly ridiculous as create hell and condemn his own creation to infinite suffering, I smell a rat. I can't help but smell a rat.
Okay, so wait. Are you saying it's incoherent?
It's incoherent.
Morally?
It's morally incoherent.
Okay. If God is the author of good and bad, then how is it morally incoherent?
But just as he is presenting a universe to me, he presents to me a universe with rules and goes, live meaningfully as a good person. Assuming that's what God chose to do. He decided to create me and B, to tell me this. And yet his behaviour simultaneously is in contradiction to what he chose to tell me.
How?
Because he created hell. Okay? He decided that he wouldn't be very benign or loving, that he would punish certain things infinitely for making finite transgressions, which is built into their hardwiring because they're fallible. He knows they're fallible because he made them fallible. He knows they'll make mistakes and then he'll punish them infinitely for doing what he knew they'd do. That's ridiculous.
So now we get down to 2-3 assumptions which we can break down. These are the assumptions which you're saying leads to incoherency. The first is that, say the desire of homosexuality or the desire of something else. It doesn't mean a human being has to act upon it, number one.
I know this argument. You're saying there's a difference between having a proclivity and choosing to act on it. The sin is in the choice.
Number two, one second. Number two, the Prophet Muhammad taught us that all of mankind, all of the children of Adam are all sinners, and the best of the sinners are those who repent. So it's not the case where a person is sinful and that's it, game over.
I get it, but just think it through devil's advocate a minute. God went through a creative process in his head where he goes, I can create whatever kind of universe I want. I know, I'll create some beings that are fallible.
They're all fallible.
Right, so he could have chosen to make them infallible.
Okay, so firstly,
to me, that guy's really got an attitude problem. I don't, even if he's real, I'm not going to embrace it.
Okay, so that's what, look, what it is this. It's not incoherent. What it really, you don't want to believe in a God like that. That's the real issue. It's not the incoherency. It's you don't want to believe in what you consider to be an evil God.
No, I'm saying he's sending out very inconsistent... I don't want to believe in an evil God. And the evidence from religion suggests to me I'm dealing with a benign God.
Okay, now, when it comes to...
If he's an evil God, is it
eternal, hellfire, eternal?
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that to you. Sorry. Okay, that was heavy, given the context.
Okay, look, the last thing I'll say to you is reconsider...
Let me apologise for that statement, because I know that's probably a very bad thing to say to you. Right?
Look, fine.
Whichever the God was, I think Tony, I'm not going to embrace you just because you're the most powerful thing. You've got to be the good thing.
Look, what it is you're not God.
No.
Right? But your attitude right now is that you dictate to God what God should be doing.
No, my attitude is that before I embrace a deity, I've got to use some level of my own discrimination based on the God-given faculties God gave me.
No, if you were doing that, then you would have come to realize there is no incoherency. The real issue is you don't want to believe in a God that creates an eternal
life. It's possible that's the case. It's also possible that what I'm saying really is solvent. If he is a good God, I expect him to behave benign.
Okay, so look.
And he is.
Look, let's stick to divine. Let's stick to divine command theory. Let's stick to God being the author of right and wrong. It's impossible. It's impossible for. impossible
if
for
that were the
incoherency.
case, but then the kind of God that you're envisaging is basically just the most powerful thing there is. Yeah?
The real issue is you don't want to believe in that.
What defines your God then primarily is he's the most powerful thing.
We believe God to be the most.
He has to.
We believe
He may have to be, but
we
what's
believe
actually
God to
seems
be the
to
most
me-
powerful, the most merciful.
the merciful thing's not
Yes, it does.
It's not working.
Wait, 1 second. And God is also, look, I'll give you the different names of God. The just as well,
Nope.
and the punisher.
Absolute
Look, what it is.
He may be winning on power, but he's losing on justice, and he's losing on
No, but
mercy.
According
the
to his definition.
thing is, your definition.
All I can do in my best goodwill is make a decision, and I know my soul's at stake, so I'm not trying to be frivolous. I understand the stakes, but in good faith, if there is a God who has a purpose for me, it's to use my faculties the best I can, and they tell me there's an inconsistency here and we can do better. Yeah, that a God who will punish his creation in an eternal hell is not consistent with a
No,
God
but
who will
what-
tell you to treat everybody
No,
the way you wouldn't be treated
Wait,
yourself.
wait.
It's not consistent.
Wait, hang on. It's impossible if given God is the author of right and wrong, it's impossible
Yeah,
for
if.
there to be incoherency in God's commands.
Yes, if, which raises...
No, so I understand you don't believe
No,
in
you're
God.
right. The key word there is if. So you're right. If that's the case, it would be impossible. Therefore, maybe it's not the case.
No, so what it really comes down to
You
is
see
this.
the flip side of the coin.
The flip side of the coin would only work if you had an argument to and this is why things come down to what is true. So I would build a case for Islam based on rationality and spirituality, and in your case, it would be you'd have to build a case opposing them. So right now, we're looking through two different paradigms.
I'm not trying to oppose. I'm saying I want to build the most self-consistent. I've got to guess the nature of the universe I live in. I've got to place good bets on it. Yeah? Life is about trying to make good value judgments, which means good bets, good guesses on how to evaluate things. Okay? And I'm evaluating I live in a self-consistent universe. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it isn't. But I'm placing my bets on that one. Self-consistency. Yeah? And because I expect self-consistency, I'm going to apply that axiom across the board in all fields,
But what you do-
including religion, morality, science,
but-
and everything.
Sure.
Personal ethics.
No, but I
and I
understand-
notice a clear inconsistency in religions which insist on a hell. That seems
you're-
contradictory to the idea of a merciful God.
No, but-
now, hang on, you must at your gut level be able to appreciate my point. The clear contradiction between hell and mercy.
No, there is no contradiction. I'll explain to you why.
I can't even feel 1% of
No,
what I'm
I'll
saying.
explain to you why though.
It's going to be difficult.
No, I'll explain to you why. Nobody goes to hell unless they deserve it.
But they can't possibly deserve
Wait,
it
wait,
if they
wait,
got
hang on.
created against their will
Wait,
with a
hang
nature
on.
which was going to
Hang
fail.
on.
It's-
Look, Tony, the real issue is the God complex. You are dictating to God what God should do.
No, you're
Because look, if God, and you already agreed with me, if God is the author of right and wrong, there is no incoherency. The real incoherency is when you use your definition of right and wrong, of mercy, of justice, and then you apply that to God and say God should not
Okay,
have
let's
created
be
hell.
accurate. If God is the author of right and wrong, and you happen to have embraced exactly the correct book with exactly the correct interpretation of what that right and wrong is, so it's a double if, then what you say is true.
Yes.
However, I would question that you have embraced a book which is 100% to the last syllable, 100% of representation.
I agree.
And I would also question necessarily that God is the author of good and bad, although actually I embrace the idea, but you might mean it at a supernatural level, maybe I don't. But in principle I kind of do embrace it, but I expect God to be self-consistent to the principles of justice and mercy. In other words, I expect God to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
That makes you
Look.
No, it doesn't make me good, I just have to make a judgment.
Okay,
I don't mistake myself for God, but I'm trying to embrace the best that is possible.
So far with what you just said here, I agree.
Thank you.
That's where we agree. Now, in terms of the spirituality aspect, I'll bring the book next week. We'll have that sort of discussion. And where we disagree, it will really come down to what we believe to be true. That's where we're going to disagree.
Yeah, but you say that like it's nothing. It's virtually the whole thing.
Yeah. So no, but that will change the way you look at the world. It'll change everything. And if I was to adopt your belief,
Well, let's wait until next week for that. You can conclude on that next week.
Yeah.
You can't conclude that now.
What time is it?
I think it's late.
Is it late?
very late.
Can I just say how brilliant you two have conducted yourselves, and what a great credit to Speakers Corner you two have been. Thank you very much. It's awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I really enjoyed the chat.
I did.
And everything. Thank you. Take care.